There are infinite versions of you, but only one is trying to wake you up right now. Will you listen? Have you ever felt like something invisible was trying to tap you on the shoulder? A whisper in your dreams, a pattern that repeats too precisely to be random, a pull towards something you can't quite name. These aren't accidents, they're invitations. What if I told you that somewhere, just slightly out of reach, another version of you exists? Not a metaphor, not a fantasy, but a parallel self, living a different life in a different branch of reality. And what if that version of you has found a way to send you a message? Most people brush these things off. Deja vu, coincidence, strange dreams. But what if those are just the symptoms of something far deeper? Evidence that the veil between realities is thinner than we think. Science calls it the multiverse. Spiritual traditions call it the astral plane, the higher self, the mirror world. But the message is the same. There is more than one version of you. And sometimes, just sometimes, those versions collide. When you dream of a life you've never lived, when you feel emotions that don't match your reality, when you suddenly remember a path you never took, these may be more than imagination. They may be echoes, traces, clues from a version of you that's trying to reach across dimensions to guide you. Maybe they've made a choice you haven't yet. Maybe they've seen the outcome you're still approaching, and maybe they've found a way to reach you, not with words, but through synchronicity, through the fabric of time folding in strange, beautiful ways, through signs only you would notice. Why? Because sometimes the only one who can warn you is you. This isn't science fiction. This is a living possibility backed by some of the strangest truths in both quantum physics and spiritual experience. It's real enough to rattle the boundaries of everything we assume about life, choice, and time. And if you've seen certain numbers repeat, if your dreams feel like memories, if you've ever felt out of place in your own life, then you might already be experiencing the first signs of a crossover. So the question isn't whether your parallel self is trying to reach you. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? What if you're not just one self living one life? What if you are a thread in a vast web of versions, each making different choices, each walking slightly different timelines, all existing at once? This isn't just spiritual philosophy, it's a theory deeply rooted in modern physics. According to the multiverse hypothesis, every time a decision is made, reality splits. In one world, you turned left. In another, you turned right. In one timeline, you followed your passion. In another, you stayed safe. And now, across countless dimensions, there are versions of you living out every possible outcome. But these realities aren't sealed off from each other as tightly as we once believed. In fact, many physicists suggest that there are ways these dimensions may interact. Subtle overlaps, interference patterns, and energetic bleed-throughs that manifest as synchronicities or deja vu. Think of a dream that felt more real than your waking life, a memory that doesn't belong to your current experience, but still makes your heart ache with familiarity. What if that was a message, not from the past or the future, but from a version of you who has already walked a path you're about to step into? Quantum entanglement suggests that particles, no matter how far apart, can be so deeply connected that they instantly affect each other. Now, expand that idea. What if consciousness works the same way? What if all the versions of you across timelines are entangled at the level of soul or thought, meaning that one version's breakthrough, awakening, or pain ripples across to others like a wave? This could explain why you sometimes feel a shift before anything in your reality changes, like your inner world is reacting to something unseen, something distant, but real. The tremor of another you, making a choice that echoes through the grid of your shared existence. String theory takes this even further, proposing that we live not in just 3 dimensions, but possibly in up to 11. In these higher dimensions, time behaves differently, energy behaves differently, and movement between states of reality might not be linear, but vibrational. In other words, Your consciousness might have the ability to resonate with alternate versions of you, not by traveling through space, but by tuning into a frequency. Just like a radio picks up different stations, your thoughts, emotions, and intuitive states may shift you closer or further from certain timelines. Have you ever noticed that when you're in a deeply emotional state, whether it's joy, grief, or clarity, you begin to receive strange signs, numbers repeating, dreams intensifying, memories flooding back? What if these moments aren't hallucinations, but harmonizations? What if you're briefly vibrating at the same frequency as a parallel self, and the veil between your realities grows thinner? Spiritual traditions across cultures have spoken about this for centuries. The higher self, the double, the mirror soul, the astral body, they all point to the same truth, that you are not one being trapped in one body, but a network of selves, some awake, some asleep, some trying to reach you because you are ready to awaken, ready to align, ready to remember. Because even if you've forgotten your connection to the others, they have not forgotten you. And when the time is right, they find ways to call out, not through words, but through energy, through dreams that feel like instructions, through objects that appear at just the right moment, through thoughts that feel borrowed from somewhere else. These experiences don't need to make sense to be meaningful. In fact, they often arrive cloaked in mystery to force you to pay attention. A sudden urge to change direction in life, a memory from childhood resurfacing after years, a strong intuitive knowing that defies logic. These are not glitches, they are bridges between you and the yous who have already crossed something you now face. They reach out not to control your path, but to illuminate it. To say, I've been there. I made this choice. I saw this outcome. And you deserve to walk forward with awareness, not blindness. But they can't reach you if your mind is closed, if you dismiss every strange moment as coincidence, if you ignore your own inner voice, if you let the noise of the world drown out the quiet signal trying to break through. The language of your parallel self is not English. It is energy, it is pattern, it is resonance. And when you learn to listen, not with your ears, but with your awareness, everything begins to change. Let's go deeper. Imagine for a moment that every thought, every emotion, every decision you've ever made leaves behind an energetic imprint, not just in your own life, but in the fabric of the universe itself. Now, imagine that in a neighboring timeline, another version of you is feeling something remarkably similar. A deep longing, a powerful shift, a transformational moment. And for just a brief instant, your frequencies match. When that happens, the barrier between your worlds thins, and the signal from their experience crosses over into yours, not as a sentence, but as a symbol, a pattern, a pull. This is where synchronicity becomes something more than coincidence. This is where it becomes contact. Have you ever seen the same number appear again and again? 1111, 222, 333. Or perhaps it was a name you hadn't thought about in years, suddenly showing up in a book, on a street sign, in a conversation with a stranger. Maybe it was a butterfly that kept showing up in your dreams and then landed right in front of you on a day you needed guidance most. These are not accidents. In the context of parallel cells, these are moments of alignment when your current experience vibrates at the same frequency as a version of you walking a different path. These echoes travel through the cracks in the veil and arrive in your life like breadcrumbs. Follow them, and you follow the path your higher self is laying out before you. Now imagine this. A version of you is facing a huge decision. They're on the brink of either breaking through or breaking down, and the energetic ripple from their crisis reaches you, only you don't recognize it for what it is. You just feel off, anxious. You can't sleep. You question everything. But what if those feelings are not your own? What if they're echoes of your other self navigating a turning point, and the reason you're feeling them is because that same fork in the road is coming up in your timeline too. This is how shared evolution works across dimensions. The versions of you that are ready to grow will try to pull the others forward, sometimes gently, sometimes with chaos, but always with purpose. You might hear the same message repeated in different forms, on a podcast, in a book, from a friend. You might feel like you're being prepared for something, but you're not sure what. That sense of anticipation, that tension building without release, it's your parallel self calling from just beyond the veil, not to scare you, not to haunt you, but to prepare you. And sometimes the signs are far more direct. You dream of a city you've never been to, only to find yourself drawn to visit it months later. You have a sudden urge to learn a skill you never cared about, only to discover it leads you to a life-changing opportunity. These intuitive nudges are often dismissed because they don't come with instructions. But that's the point. They're not commands, they're activations, seeds of knowing planted in your consciousness by another you who has already seen where the trail leads. One of the most fascinating aspects of this phenomenon is what we call memory dissonance, the sudden vivid recollection of something that never happened to you, or at least not in this version of you. You might suddenly remember being in love with someone you never met. You might grieve a life you've never lived. You might feel nostalgic for a place that doesn't exist on any map you've seen. These memories could be bleed-throughs from alternate timelines, where another version of you made a different choice and lived a different life. When that version reaches a moment of deep reflection, the emotional charge they emit might ripple across dimensions and land in your heart. That's why it feels so real, because it is real, just not here. And this can work in both directions. Your growth can inspire your other selves too. When you make a courageous choice, when you forgive someone deeply, when you take a step toward your truth, that energy doesn't just stay in your world, it vibrates outward. It gives your parallel selves strength to do the same. You become the version that reaches back through the veil and whispers, "It's possible. Keep going." We often think of healing and awakening as personal journeys, but they are also collective, interdimensional, a spiral of souls learning to rise together. Each time one version wakes up, it sends a ripple across the multiverse. Each act of truth is a flare in the darkness, calling the others home. Now let's talk about the bridge, where all of this becomes most visible: dreams. Dreams have long been regarded as mysterious, symbolic, and strange. But what if they are also real? Not in the way we think of waking reality, but as portals, direct channels between dimensions. Your parallel selves may not be able to speak to you through words, but they can reach you in the space where logic sleeps and awareness expands. That space is your dreamscape. It is there, more than anywhere else, that the veil lifts. Have you ever woken up with tears in your eyes from a life you never lived? Or jolted out of sleep after an adventure in a city you've never seen, yet somehow recognized? These aren't just products of an active imagination. They may be glimpses into the paths of your parallel selves. A version of you may be living in that city. A version of you may be in love with that person. A version of you may be facing the very conflict you just resolved in your dream. In dreams, the soul does not respect the boundaries of space-time. It remembers, it travels, it connects. And when your consciousness is unshackled from your waking mind, it can meet itself across dimensions. This is why certain dreams feel more real than real life. It's not just because of emotional intensity, it's because your mind has brushed against a version of you that exists right now. And in that moment, a message was passed. Not through language, but through feeling, through symbolism, through scenes stitched together with meaning. A hallway that leads to a locked door, a mirror you're afraid to look into, a voice calling your name from a fog. These are not arbitrary. They are invitations. If you begin to track these dreams, to write them down, to notice which symbols repeat, you may start to decode the language your parallel self is using to reach you. In many indigenous traditions, dreams are not separate from reality. They are considered a form of reality, a deeper one, a space where ancestors, guides, and versions of the self communicate through imagery and emotion. What if your parallel self is trying to warn you of a path not to take, or preparing you for a breakthrough you're about to experience? What if the reason you've been having the same recurring dream is because another version of you is living out a story that holds a vital lesson for your own? Sometimes, these dreams carry emotional charges that linger for days. You may feel grief without knowing why, or joy that seems to have no source. These emotions are often the residue of your parallel self's experiences. Their joy bleeding into your consciousness, their pain echoing across timelines. And it's not always just one version. Sometimes, multiple versions of you may converge in a single dream. Different selves, different faces, different choices, all reflecting possibilities, all speaking through the dreamscape. Lucid dreams, too, offer a powerful opportunity. In that in-between state, when you become aware you're dreaming, your consciousness expands beyond the limits of this dimension. If you ask in that state, "Show me what I need to know," you might be shown a version of you doing exactly what you've been afraid to do. You might see the life that's waiting for you if you let go of fear. And sometimes you may encounter a guide, a figure that seems familiar but also otherworldly. Many believe that these guides are not separate beings, but higher versions of the self, a parallel you, more awake, more evolved, offering wisdom back to the version that still needs it. You might also have dreams that don't make logical sense, but feel symbolically important. Perhaps you're walking through an endless desert, searching for something. Perhaps you're swimming underwater and find you can breathe. These dreams might represent the emotional state of your parallel self, or the lesson they're trying to share. A dream where you're lost could reflect a parallel version's confusion and serve as a call to realign. A dream of flying might symbolize a breakthrough they're experiencing and a signal for you to expand. What happens when we start listening? When we stop dismissing these moments as nonsense and instead lean in? A subtle shift begins. You become more attuned to the invisible currents guiding your life. You begin to feel when something is off, not just within you, but in the fabric of your choices. You start noticing that dreams, synchronicities, emotions, and memories are not isolated. They form a web, a living map of messages from every direction and every version of you. And perhaps most powerfully, you begin to realize that you are not at the mercy of fate, that you are connected to an infinite intelligence, not external, but internal. A part of you that has walked ahead, returned, and is reaching back. Not to control you, not to judge you, but to remind you that you are so much more than this moment. You are possibility. You are multidimensional. You are the dreamer and the dream. Now let's look at the phenomena that defy even our dreams, moments in waking life that seem to crack the structure of reality itself. We call them glitches, reality anomalies, events so peculiar, so impossible to explain, that they make us stop and ask, what just happened? Maybe it was a clock that skipped forward, then back. Maybe you swore you left your keys on the table, but they were suddenly in your coat. Maybe someone remembers a conversation you're certain never took place. Or you remember it clearly, and they don't recall it at all. These aren't just memory lapses or coincidences. They are often signs that the fabric between dimensions has stretched, twisted, or briefly overlapped. One of the most chilling and compelling examples is what's sometimes called a timeline slip. You're doing something ordinary, walking through a store, driving on your usual route, standing in your kitchen, and then, for just a second, it feels wrong. The light is different. The sound feels muffled. You feel watched, but not in a fearful way, in a familiar way. And when you snap back, everything is normal. But something inside you knows you've just brushed up against another version of reality. A version where something was slightly different, a shift in atmosphere, a shift in self. These moments may not be accidents. They may be convergence points. Think of your life as a stream, always flowing, always moving. Your parallel selves are rivers beside you. Sometimes, a bend in the flow brings those rivers close. Close enough that the energies, decisions, or events of one timeline begin to reflect into another. You experience this as a glitch. But it's not broken. It's contact. An echo from a version of you standing at a fork in the road, sending out a flare to guide you toward or away from something crucial. Let's take this further. What if some of your most inexplicable thoughts are not truly yours? A sudden desire to call someone you haven't spoken to in years, a strong aversion to a place you've never been, a deep pull toward a career path you never considered. These impulses might be bleed-throughs, the emotional signals of a version of you who did make that choice, or didn't, and is now sending that information back. We often assume all our thoughts originate from within us, but consciousness is not a closed loop. It's a network, a field, a vibration, and like any wave, it can pick up frequencies beyond its point of origin. You might be living a version of your life that's out of sync with your deeper truth, and your parallel self, the one who aligned with their calling, who faced their fear, who healed their wounds, is reaching out, not to save you, but to activate you, to remind you of what's possible, to say, I've walked the road ahead. Let me show you the way. But how do we respond to this? How do we strengthen the link? The first step is awareness, recognizing that these signs are not random, that your life is speaking to you through numbers, dreams, coincidences, and glitches. The second step is presence. When something strange happens, pause. Don't rush to explain it away. Sit with it. Ask, what might this be telling me? What feeling does it stir? What memory does it awaken? The third step is intention. You can choose to engage with your parallel self through journaling, through dream work, through visualization, through meditation. You don't need to know exactly how it works. You just need to be willing to open the channel. Here's a practice. Close your eyes. Imagine you're standing in a vast mirror room, thousands of reflections all around you, each one a different you. Some are older, some are younger, some look the same, but feel different. Now, imagine one version of you stepping forward. Maybe they feel stronger, wiser, or maybe they feel broken, needing you. Ask, what do you want me to know? Listen for what arises, not with your ears, but with your awareness. This is how the connection deepens. This is how the guidance begins. You are not just the result of your past. You are the convergence of countless timelines, and at any moment, you can choose which version of yourself you wish to become, the versions of you that suffered, healed, broke, rose. They are all within you, and they are speaking, through the strange, through the subtle, through the signs, all asking the same thing. Are you paying attention? Are you ready to remember? There's one more layer we haven't touched yet. It's the one that turns this from a concept into a living truth, embodiment. All the knowledge in the world means nothing if you don't feel it in your bones. If your body doesn't recognize the truth, then it stays theory. But when your breath slows, when your skin reacts to words, when you feel chills for reasons you can't explain, that's when the transmission begins. That's when your parallel self isn't just an idea, it's a presence, a mirror, a guide. Sometimes the communication doesn't come through thoughts or dreams or numbers. It comes through your own behavior. You catch yourself saying something profound you don't remember learning. You look in the mirror and see a different light in your eyes. You feel a sudden release of emotion, a rush of clarity, a sense of something invisible snapping into place. These aren't flukes. These are the moments your timelines brush against each other. These are the breakthroughs your other self has already earned, and now you're feeling the ripple. There is no single path to aligning with your parallel self, no blueprint, because alignment is not about doing what they did. It's about remembering who you are. It's about reclaiming the version of you that you buried. The one who was brave before life hardened them. The one who dreamed before the world convinced them to shrink. That version of you is still alive. And sometimes, they're the one trying to reach you, not from some distant star, but from the parts of your own soul you've locked away. So ask yourself, what if I stopped resisting the strange? What if I welcomed the unknown? What if I paid attention to the signs, the synchronicities, the slips in reality, not as problems to solve, but as invitations to evolve? Because that's what they are. Invitations, opportunities, thresholds. And when you start to say yes to those subtle callings, the entire structure of your life begins to change. You begin to choose differently, not out of fear, but out of alignment. You begin to feel where you're meant to go, not because someone told you, but because it vibrates through you like a memory you hadn't remembered yet. You begin to sense the presence of guidance that doesn't come from outside, but from within. From the you that already exists, the you that already healed, the you that already walked the fire and made it to the other side. And maybe, just maybe, that version of you is watching right now, not through a screen, but through the mirror of time, waiting for this moment, waiting for you to wake up, waiting for you to realize that everything you've been searching for already exists within you. So now, you have a choice. You can brush this off, forget the signs, ignore the signal, or you can take the first step. You can begin listening, tracking the patterns, writing down the dreams, following the threads that tug at your soul in the quiet moments. Because if you've made it this far, your parallel self is no longer knocking, they're standing in front of you. And the question is no longer, are they reaching out? The question is, are you finally ready to reach back? If this message stirred something in you, it's not by accident. You're not alone on this journey. You never were. A version of you has been guiding you here, through dreams, through signs, through every quiet whisper your soul tried to follow. So if you're ready to reclaim that connection, if you're ready to walk the path your parallel self already knows, then make this moment count. Drop a lightning bolt in the comments to claim your awakening. Subscribe to Mystery School so you don't miss what's coming next. Your timeline is shifting. The signal is clear. You are the one you've been waiting for.